Hello and welcome everybody to the Sunday Sketch, where today we're going to be drawing the Hinox, or Hinox? I'm going to go with Hinox just because I feel like that's more correct. I'm going to be drawing these fearsome giants from The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now, those of you who were here or watched my Goron video, you know what? There we go. I think I may have forgotten to change the stream name. How to draw a Hinox, or Hinox. But probably a Hinox, because that's what I'm going to call him. Alright, so, those of you here for the Goron video, they seem to have a fairly similar body structure, but today I'm going to be going into all the things that make the Hinox, or Hinox if you prefer, but I prefer Hinox. So here we go. I got my reference folder already set up, so those of you following at home, you want to make sure that you're looking at your reference material, right? And the first thing I'm going to do, like always, is to chart out some of the important features as I see them. I'm gonna say the hips are probably there. Now this is a gross saggy boob. So what we're gonna do, no offense to anyone out there who's got gross saggy boobs, but I don't like looking at them, and it's part of what makes this monster feel, a good bit monstery. So unfortunately, we can't tell exactly what's going on with the ribcage as well as we could with other monsters. So instead, mostly because it's deformed, right? So instead, I'm going to try and, of course, we could look at the Stalnox, which is another monster in the game, who is a skeletal Hinox. Okay, so I'm going to say that there we have our general breakdown. Now I am going to add the head in, because that is important. And as you can see, very similar shape to what I'm using for the upper torso, right? The head. So, we're going to go ahead and make our new layer. We're going to fade that out, and we're going to draw our own pose for the Hinox. And I'm actually going to go ahead and start with the head this time. A lot of our reference has him in a chase link pose, but I'm going to go ahead and not draw him in that pose. And there we have the proportions of the pose we're using. I built my own skeleton based on the one that I kind of sketched out there, right? Those of you who have seen this show before, you should be pretty familiar with the process in which I do things. Although this time we're using more basic shapes, so that's neat. And in fact, the pelvis area, right, for the Dread Hinox is like there, so I can come in here and use another basic shape. You know, put a nice little triangle there, and there you go. Right? Sorry, I'm a little congested today, and I am on Benadryl, so that's part of the reason the stream is coming in so late. Had to wait for some stuff to clear up in here, but I did want to get one in today, because I feel really bad about missing so many videos. And I wanted to get that content out there. So here we go. So we have drawn our Hinox skeleton, so I don't need that layer anymore. And so now we can get into some more details. So fade out that layer, or of course if you drew your skeleton at home, you know, you wanna draw the skeleton part lightly, right? So here we go. Now, the Hinox seems to have a hump on its back. So we're actually going to lower the head a little bit. And we're actually going to lower the head to about there. Because that hump is probably part of where his spine feeds into his head, right? Usually is. Plus it makes him feel more monstrous. As we can see from the shape here, here, and there, see, that's where his spine is. See that? But right now, we're drawing a head. So gonna go back. Like I said, I'm lowering the head significantly. And now you gotta balance out some facial features, right? Let's take a look at the Hinox's face. He's got the one big eye, right? And then he's got a pig snout. And then he's got a big old mouth with some tusks. And he's got a little horn on his head, like a unicorn. So we're going to take that information and we're going to transfer it to my guy. Little unicorn horn. Little eyeball. Little pig snout. Little tusks. Little pointy ears, and of course the crazy hair that he's got going on here. Now, check out their eyes, because this is going to be an important part. One of the details, right? The eye has that Eye of Sauron cat-like shape to it, right? So we do want to take that into consideration. messed up that. There we go, that's better. Of course, this is also, again, just sort of a rough sketch, right? Okay, now let's get into the body. We've got the head mapped out. Again, we can start refining this on a later layer or later on in the sketch, but you do want to map out, you know, where the body parts are. So we're going to assume that the shoulders and the rib cage and stuff kind of follow a set plan, right? The pectoral muscles would go in right about here, but of course they got the gross saggy boobs, so we're gonna make them sag and we're gonna bring them down here. For this video in particular, it's useful to kind of understand how fat rolls and stuff work. So, but I'm not gonna get too into that because it kind of freaks me out. I'm already starting to get some of my own in real life. I should exercise more. And then I'm gonna draw a fairly complicated hand. You can draw a real simple hand or a real complex one. Because he's got the 2 fingers, right? And then he's gonna have the front panel, right? Because everybody's got that front panel. But then what we're gonna do is we're gonna blow it out. We're actually gonna pardon me. Oh yeah. Okay, sorry about that. We are actually going to. Yeah, that's why I've been editing my videos lately, just because the weather has been making me sneeze a lot. So I've been live streaming less and less. But I am live streaming today, so, because that's how I do this format. So we're actually gonna cover up his waistline with his big fat belly. You know, Gorons, they're round, but this is the Hinox is big and fat. Belly button probably looks like that. And actually, we can make them even fatter. Give him some big old meaty thunder thighs. And now we're going to take a look at his feet, and it looks like he's got feet that kind of have, you know, 2 toes to kind of match his hands. So we're going to go ahead and do that. before shortening there, and it should be relatively easy. You just pick where you want the end of the toe, and then you kind of just connect it to the rest of the thing. And there we go, our first sketch layer. And again, that's just the basic sketch. You want to follow it up with other layers. You want to follow it up with other stylized, stylization features and such. So now I'm going to go ahead and take a whack at doing a little bit more with his head. There we go. And again, your line work, even at this stage, doesn't need to be super, super precise. Because there's always more. You know, more you can refine, more you can do. These guys kind of have an uneven nose anyway. A lot of what the Hinox has on its face is pretty uneven, so you can kind of mess around with it. You know, like break off one of its tusks, you know, do some battle damage or what have you. Whatever you want, really. I'm gonna make his tongue stick out on mine, you know, give him a big old sloppy tongue. And in fact, let's be funny. I'm gonna be a little bit cheeky here. Take a closer look at his hair. And it almost looks like the top of his head has some eyelash things going on. then it just turns into like some kind of crazy mutton chops on the sides. That's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm gonna give my guy, some amazing mutton chops. And to simulate hair, let me clue you in, right? You only need you need very little to make it look like hair, right? You want to simulate a few hairs, but not all of them. So you follow, like if I were doing all of the hairs, it'd be like this, right? But instead of doing all of the hairs, I'm just taking this information here and leaving out all of that, you see? Maybe adding an extra. So you're estimating a lot of shapes, and it can be, and because it's hair, it can be messy, it can be dirty, it can even be incomplete in a few spots in your line work, but then you go back in, and when you're doing your paint overs and things, that's when you get a little bit more detailed with that area, right? So anyway, just again, that's my process. You feel free to develop your own. And of course the horn on the head, which is, you know, important for the cooking recipes or potion recipes or whatever. Not really sure what they do, but maybe it's important. Now the ear is interesting because it's sort of an elf ear, but it's a little crooked. So it's more like a hobbit ear. So what I did, what I'm going to do, I'll show you how I judge these shapes, right? So first, the base of his ear is going to be right here. The hole for where he hears things is probably here, which means he's going to have this shape, which is, if you look at my ear here, you know, you got, a lot of people have this little flappy bit. Then I'm going to judge a lot of animals have, you know, with longer ears, have this cone shape going on. Where their ears kind of, you know, cone forward like that, right? And so we're going to do the same thing here. But then we're going to end this one down because it's all floppy. And uneven. And you're going to want to shrivel it up towards the end, right? So that when all is said and done, it looks a bit like that. And then this one, I'm going to do something a little bit different, but I am going to keep the ear lead in about there, right? So the ear's in the same place, but it's become a little bit more crooked on this side, a little bit more mangled. So it actually twists up. Which, you know, is going to give this poor guy, a hell of a time in the rain, really. Because that water is just going to pour right in his ear, poor guy. But that's okay, because he's a monster, so he deserves it. I mean, not to say all monsters deserve it, but some do. And these guys have been a pain often enough, right? And there we got a funny little Hinox head that is ready to eat you, ready to try to eat you. Now this is the part where I guess I'd get into some of the costume elements. So let's look at that. Right? So armbands, right? And a little vest that is very ragged and not very functional. So let's get into that. Let's give him his little vest. And again, I'm just going to approximate kind of where the lines are. You know, if I were to line this up, right, it'd be basically this. Actually, yeah, I'll break down the whole what's going on in my head here. Sorry. So the vest comes down, and you've got the armhole, and then the vest comes up, right? So now I take these and I just tear them apart. So I'm gonna cut into them a lot with a lot of the shapes that I'm making. Cut out some of the clean lines, right? I haven't really gotten into costuming before on the videos too much. A little bit on my Rito, obviously, but we made good time, you know. We're actually gonna take a full-on slice out of his jacket here because I feel like it. I feel like maybe he survived an attack from Link, and that was where Link tried to stab him before. Or maybe did stab him before. Took a nice cut out of his little vest. And now we're gonna do the same thing on the other end, but we're just gonna speed things along a little bit. And again, these little vests are natty, they're dirty. You can get into a lot of little details with them. But you know, later on. So there's his vest, but of course, he's got the nastiest man boobs. Oh, well, I actually did give my guy a bigger vest than this dude has, or at least one that fits to his body a little bit better. But then, of course, yeah, the nasty man boobs. And we treat these a lot like any other boobs. You know, they are attached to the pectoral muscles, but they're very, they're pulled down by gravity, right? Same as a woman's boobs, although, I mean, that's part of the reason they get saggy eventually, over time, unless you take good care of them. You know, gravity and time kills all of that. Guys too get that, you know, but it's usually more pronounced in women, more easily spotted. So anyway, so I'm just gonna draw that real low. Like the pectoral muscle would be about here, right? And then we just bring it down however far we want. And you can bring it down further, or you can, you know, lift it up. That is entirely up to you. I'm gonna have mine sag a little bit down to where the vest is. Now we got the zygomatic process here. I think that's what this is called. I'll have to look it up. And then I'm gonna give him a belly. It's gonna come up right underneath his boobs, his man boobs. And again, we're gonna be taking out a lot of lines because we're gonna be losing a lot of the definition on this guy. While we're doing his jiggly fat rolls. His belly button is somewhere in there. I should probably take this line back a little bit. And there we go, some gross fat lumps. You know, I bet we can remove these even more and go into more detail shading. This is the part where you got to decide, okay, how am I going to render this, right? Am I going to go, you know, more comic book sketch style, or comic book style where I have, you know, more heavy line art, and I end up doing, you know, a lot of things like hatchings and things like that? Or am I going to go softer, more subtle, do a paint over, all that kind of stuff? Got to decide that eventually. And this is going to be one of those spots where you're going to be like, okay, well, how do I want my final render to look? And I'm going to focus more on the exterior lines than on the interior, because I think I'm going to do a paint over, right? So that's how I'm going to set mine up. And he's not very strong, so we're not going to define his muscles too much, but the muscles are shaped similarly. I mean, he is strong, but like, he's flabby too, so. Anyways, but the muscles are shaped similarly. So we do still need to define those muscles without making him look too strong. So we're gonna smooth a lot instead of making this, see how pronounced I made it? We're just gonna smooth that out. got the wrist. And the hand, which, you know, however you draw hands. Hands are really a whole lesson unto themselves. To anyone who's gotten real good at drawing hands, you know, they're a whole thing, as I'm sure you know. So I'm not going to get too into hands today because I just they're difficult, to say the least. Oh, actually, I plotted this course a little bit differently, so the middle line of his arm is actually going to be here, and so this area here is going to be the inner elbow, and then his actual elbow is going to be here. Which means it's going to end up looking more like that. I would say just look at your arm and see what you find from different angles. You can take pictures, things like that, to get what I just did. And actually we made his thumb far too short for the pose we're doing, and he's got creepy long fingers anyway. So anyway, that's fine. All right. So this is what we got so far. Let me just erase some of these lines over on this other hand. And we are just about done with our base sketch. You know, we moved on to line work, made some decisions about the ears. You always want to measure out, you know, and figure out the head, all that business. Overall, I think these are really fun creatures to draw. They're a little goofy, a little lumpy, and just a good time. His knee is in there somewhere. Now, it's interesting. Here, I'll show you kind of how I look at a human knee, right? So you've got this knee joint, or the patella, rather, that sits on top of the knee joint. And then there's actually, the way the muscles kind of work, you can see a little bit of muscle go, like, on top, right? So, like, kind of like that. So oftentimes, and then that'll, you know, wrap around back, and there's a whole thing. So a lot of the times, you may see me draw a knee kind of like this, right? And that's just from studying how the knee connections work and stuff like that. It's not necessarily the right way to draw a knee, because there's you know, things are more complicated than that. But it's my shorthand for the knee, and a lot of times when you're sketching and stuff like that, you need to develop a good shorthand. So I'm going to do my shorthand for the knee right there. And we're going to put in... Ooh. Put in that foot with that big toenail. I had a really weird dream while I was napping earlier, trying to, because Benadryl always makes me drowsy, so I end up taking a nap. And sometimes I have these weird dreams. I had a dream where I grew some bats on, or I got a plant, and it turned into, or it ate a bunch of flies and stuff, and then it grew bats on this bush, and then the bats could turn into other things, and you know, they tried to eat people. It was the weirdest thing. So I had to, because I had grown some of the bats, I ended up taming one of them and using him to fight the other bats, a little like Pokemon or something. But he did not like it. He was not. He and I were not friends. Okay, sorry, shin bone. So here's another thing, because we're getting into more human anatomy here. So I'm gonna clue you in. Here's the knee. We did the knee thing up here, right? So then you can look at that front bone on your leg. You can actually like follow that along, and it ends up pulling, you know, a number like this. So your leg actually does like that, and then you can follow this bone all the way to like the front top of where your foot is, and almost all the way into your big toe. And then your ankles are like that, and the ankles are uneven, and I think it's the inside ankle is higher than the outside ankle. So so actually this one should be up here. And then that lower ankle will be there. And then we're gonna or wait, does the shin bone lead into the big toe? I gotta look at mine. It's been a little while since I've had my anatomy class. Yeah, it kind of leads. Okay, so yeah, it does. It does lead into the big toe. So you're actually doing it from the outside in there. I drew it wrong anyway. Haha. That's what happens when you're on drugs, kids. Even ones that you need to live. So his shin's gonna be like that. But then we're not gonna see that line anyway, because I don't want to have it on there. But that's, you can use that to help you judge a lot of things. So you go from where you drew your patella, like the outside of that, and go in towards your foot. Anyway, I think I will do that a little bit here, just to help add a definition. There we go. All right. And of course, you can add your necklaces of weapons, your various loincloths, things like that, and it'll be a good time. There we have our Hinox. Hope you enjoyed the video, or enjoyed the stream. Again, I'm a little bit drowsy from the Benadryl, but I did want to make sure that I got a video out today, partly because I was kind of excited about the subject matter, and partly because I'm trying to get content to be a little bit more regular. You know what? Let's make that tongue bigger, because I figure he's got a big fat pig face. He's probably got a big fatty tongue too. There we go. And there is a Hinox. Don't forget to put a necklace with some weapons on it, because that seems to be a thing. Uh, you know, it could be good weapons, could be poor weapons. Maybe you make a Hinox knight. That'd be interesting. I wonder what they'd look like. Have some fancy weapons, you know, hanging around, and maybe get some armor pieces and stuff. That'd be cool. Maybe I'll work that into this guy. And then move on to paint him. But you know, that being said, you know, this is the base sketch, and from here you would build on and build up to your final render. So hopefully this was helpful. In that, you know, again, I do really basic poses for the skeletons and stuff, but you can take the information and repose the skeleton however you feel is appropriate for whatever scene you're trying to build. A lot of these Hinox pictures have the Hinox, you know, like coming after Link somehow. Oh, I forgot the armbands. There you go. Some nice armbands. So, you know, have fun with it. Hopefully the information again is usable to you, and you can make some funny Hinox art with it. And I guess that's it for my time. If you liked the stream, liked the video, you know, leave a like on it, leave a comment about, you know, what you want me to see, what you want to see me draw next. I think I'm gonna go ahead and do the Lionel next week, and then we may be, you know, just about out of cool Zelda stuff to draw, so I might move on to another series. But you know, as always, I am open to suggestions as to, you know, what you guys would like to see me break down and work on drawing together, and we'll have a good time. Thank you so much to everybody for joining me and being so understanding this week with the game streams and everything. I will have another video for you tomorrow for sure, whether or not it's edited. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there, and I will see you again soon. Thank you, friends. Bye.